And welcome to Conservative Talk.
And there's been a lot of discussion in the GAGOP about a proposed rule change. And so we've heard you and we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, this one's going to be insightful. And welcome to Conservative Talk. My name's Justin.
And this is Jamie.
And as always, we like to encourage our subjects to make sure they are hitting the like button as well as the share button on any of the content that they do see that Jamie and I produce and put out on all of our platforms, as well as making sure that you are hitting the subscribe button as legally mandated and binding
that part now.
social contract that Jamie and I have established.
Hit the
That way, you will have an idea of what Jamie and I demand from your everyday life.
This part every time.
And you will learn to fall in line. We also require that you go to our website at conservativestalk.org and become a sponsor, forced sponsor-ish, we'll say that. And
Is this
and really help Jamie and I to be able to continue making these productions and bringing you our insight into what goes on throughout the entire state and nation, anything that is coming up. It really helps us to be able to continue with these productions. So please go to our website at conservativestalk.org and hit that sponsor tab and help us out with what you're able to. So, Jamie, with that one in mind, would you care to give us your first reminder?
Boycott hometown headlines. Continue the movement. Destroy liberal news in Northwest Georgia. I think we need to take an ad out in their papers that says boycott hometown headlines.
I've said before, that's just next level.
Yeah, I'm ready for it. But don't forget, boycott hometown headlines. And yeah, let's get this guy out of here.
Well, with that, we also want to say a quick thank you to our affiliates, and our first one being Net News Network. So make sure you are checking out Net News Network on anywhere on the internet. Just go to their website, netnewsnetwork.net. It is a grassroots compilation of local on-the-ground newscast producers to where you can really get a firsthand idea of exactly what's going on in these areas from the firsthand perspective. We also want to say a quick thank you to Veterans for America First. That is the premier America First policy organization, and they really promote and push a lot of that policy through their media arm, and that being Vet Voice. So make sure you are looking for Vet Voice on every major social media platform. That way you can connect and stay in contact with all of the America First policy producers. So, Jamie, with that, let's get right on into it.
Yeah. So this one is interesting because basically there's been a proposed rule change that, and to keep it high level at the moment, because I know Justin's going to go into all the details. This is an idea that at the state convention, we will be able to vote on whether or not a certain number of people will be allowed to tell someone if they can be registered as a Republican or have to run as an independent.
Yes. So what this rule change that's being proposed will essentially do is allow for the party, and that's put very broadly, and I really want to emphasize that point, is it is very broadly construed, and really there's no specifics on what party would really be able to restrict anyone from being able to have
it would have to fall back to the state committee, right?
Well, no, not at all.
Well, I mean, and that's kind of my thing, right? Because we don't know kind of what all language is in here, who's supposed to be involved, but the way that GAGOP operates is, the state committee is technically in charge of the party. The executive committee runs the day-to-day of the party. So in my mind, I'm thinking that something of that magnitude would be a state committee vote, because I don't see the executive committee getting involved in that. But who knows? Who knows what the...
I mean, in all honesty, you may be correct in that. and I'm using the example that was illustrated by one of the, I want to say, creators of this proposed rule change, and they cite what happened in Wyoming, and that was essentially the executive board of Wyoming reacting to what the local parties had done statewide. So all those local statewide parties had voted to censor Liz Cheney. Well, then the executive committee then came in and voted to essentially expunge her membership to that organization. It did not, that issue alone did not remove her from being able to have access to the ballot under the Republican Party platform or under the Republican Party name. It simply said that she was not a member of the Republican Party, which is not what they're trying to do with this rule change.
Which is different. And I think that's a big distinction, because I can't really give an example, right? But like you can come in, and if everyone censored something, then they could say, okay, you're no longer a member, right? People talk about that all the time, because a lot of people forget that to be a party member, there is a membership process, there is a hierarchy organization, there's a whole,
it's a private
organization, right? So they can exclude members if they want to. I think the difference is, though, is when you're talking about running for office, trying to exclude someone from running as a Republican is a totally different ballgame.
From a legal standpoint, I disagree with that.
Interesting.
Simply because you look at the establishing laws that are involved with this entire process overall. You look at the U.S. Constitution. It's Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1, essentially saying that the state legislatures have purview in choosing time, place, and manner to choose their representatives. So, or for federal government. So the state party has absolutely no method in really doing that as a qualification, although they could say, well, you are not part of our private organization, our private membership, so you would not be able to qualify under our party's rules.
Well, and go ahead. I'll let you finish.
And then the next step of that is in the state constitution. It's Article 2, Section 1, Paragraph 1. And it says that elections shall be conducted in accordance with procedures and laws established by the state legislature. Then the state legislature and the third tier comes in and says in Section 21-2-153.1 says that all of these are any registration or primary election for any sort of municipal or state election has to be done through the party rules. So it has to be done in accordance with the party rules. So if the party rules say that this is allowed, technically and legally speaking, you are following every step of that along the way.
That's interesting, because look, I've caught hell for misunderstanding that I had with some people, because the reality is you can choose whatever party you want to be with as an individual, right? You can create your own. You can be a part of the Bird Party if you want to, but in order to speak on behalf of the party, which I guess this may fall under that, in order to speak on behalf of the party, you have to be a dues-paying party member and have standing within the party structure, whether it be locally, statewide, district, something of that nature. And, you have to have the board's consent, things of that nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the major difference, right? Because what if someone comes in and says, hey, I'm a registered Republican, been voting conservative and Republican my entire life. I want to.
Well, there are no registered Republicans. I got what you're saying. Just had
I mean? I pull a Republican primary ballot, here are my credentials. And then someone just goes, yeah, no, I'm not going to let you run.
I mean, yeah, no, that is a very valid.
That's elitism at its finest, because now you're choosing who is and who can't be, a part of the political process.
And if we're doing it through the state committee fashion, like what is alluded to within the statements that was given by the creators of this proposed rule change, you're looking at essentially about 150 folks deciding for a state of almost 11 million people who can actually be on this ballot. Well, then the argument comes into play. Well, then they can run outside of that. The thing about that is the hurdles that are involved in doing that are so drastic that I mean, the likelihood that a third party candidate in this state of Georgia would be able to have to get on the ballot is
depends on how they do it.
Mind-boggling.
Depends on how they do it, though, right? I feel like we can speculate about this, right? But what happens when you have? What happens if whoever decides on this committee that you already got a well-known incumbent that they choose not to register? They already have standing. They already have the model.
To even get on the ballot as a third party candidate, you have to have almost 10,000 registered voters' signatures to be able to do that. That's the hurdle that I'm talking about.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, okay, we're looking at this from the perspective of this is someone new coming in getting rejected versus someone who already is an incumbent who now wants to run for re-election, and whatever group decides says, no, we don't want you to run as a Republican. They choose to run as an independent. They go through those hurdles, right? But they already have the standing in the community to get the signatures and go through the hurdle. What I'm saying is we could see a point where we have a lot more independents, because
I mean, there is that distinct possibility.
And I'm just speaking hypothetically, right? Because who knows? I mean,
yeah, I
don't know of a situation where that could happen. You know what I mean? Or someone who would be an incumbent that the state committee would not be like, oh, okay, here you go. Or and I'm just saying state committee, but it could be executive committee, it could be a whatever group, right? That would not kind of really allow for that to happen. But I mean, that's a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, it is a very real possibility. And I mean, that's the reason why they're trying to do this rule change, is essentially to create a litmus test that if you don't fall within what their purview of the rules and the guidelines for the political party that they are attesting to represent, then you are not allowed. Essentially, like you said, elitism at its finest. The thing about it is a lot of people within this faction, and they do call it a faction, that are really pressing forward on this issue.
And
are very hypocritical in this issue on this stance. And well, for one example, the state party rules that are already in place says that a member of the executive board cannot get involved in a Republican primary and pushing any candidate on either side for incumbent or a challenger. But you see some executive board members coming out and supporting people who are challengers to incumbents, or promoting incumbents against challengers. So you see that. And so they're already violating the rules. So how are we to really have a genuine knowledge and understanding and a
clear direction?
Well, not just that, but just confidence in the fact that our party is going to really adhere by the guidelines that they set, because they're already not following them.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, really and truthfully, I'd like to get the person who proposed this on the show to kind of talk about it.
Well, he's been invited,
but I know that's why we just decided to do it without him. But it's interesting to think, what is the true intent behind this? Is this a shadow game? Is this an attempt for some kind of random elitist control?
Well,
under you know what I mean?
In all honesty, I think that it's a movement to create a pure party, and a party that adheres.
I don't know what that means.
Well, a party that adheres to the rules, to the guidelines that have been explicitly laid out by the state party rules, of which if you are attesting to be a representative of that party, you have to adhere. I mean, you should adhere to those rules. But the thing about that is I can't think of any Republican candidate off the top of my head that doesn't adhere to those rules. Just they just don't adhere to it to the same let's say at least to the eyes and perspectives of folks from our area, Northwest Georgia. Somebody from the metro area would adheres to all those rules and adheres to every single bit of what the state party guidelines are, but not to the extent of what we see of adherence for the state party rules would be from the perspective of Northwest Georgia.
Yeah, like a regional perspective. Like, North Georgia thinks differently than South Georgia. So, I can't knock a conservative in South Georgia because, they have a slightly different view of conservatism than I do.
And I mean, that's the thing that makes our party good, is the fact that there are varying levels of not really adherence to this, but different standings and different I guess you would say just different ideas of where we should be as a party. But that ultimately leads to more discussion and more conversation,
which freaks me out, right? Because how can we stand for freedom and then we're going to tell people what to do?
Yes. And by doing this and by having this rule change, you are eliminating the possibility of having that discussion. You're telling these people they cannot become a member, or they can't run for this office. So then that person is excluded from the discussion or the conversation. They no longer have the option or the opportunity to really be persuaded to run to what true conservatism is, especially regionally speaking, our version of Northwest Georgia conservatism.
Yeah.
They no longer have that option. They no longer have that possibility
or that voice, right? What like we could, I mean, I'm just thinking of,
yeah, the voice, I could care less about the voice.
Well, here's what I'm saying though, right? Like I always try to think through every probable possibility in a situation before I ever personally make a vote or form an opinion or make a decision, right? And the thing that worries me is depending on how this structure is formed, we could be looking at people who are from one region. We could be looking at people from a similar walk of life that is a different form of conservatism. They could be from rural, which would exclude anyone who is like inside the city who is a conservative, and that in itself is scary. I mean, just to be honest.
So you actually brought up a point that I hadn't considered in this perspective just yet. The fact that, say, for instance, every regional area throughout Georgia wanted to gang up on the southwestern portion of Georgia, and they just did not like people from the southwestern portion of Georgia. Well, if the state committee convenes and meets and decides, hey, don't really want any of these conservatives on this ballot for Southwest Georgia here, we're just not going to allow them to register with the party. So I mean, it is
they could sell off. They could sell off whole regions.
Well, think about it.
Well, think about it.
They could another part of it. What if you're looking into this from almost kind of I'm bringing back the reasoning behind the reason for the 17th Amendment, where it was direct election of senators. They were essentially selling off seats for the U.S. Senate seats. Well, maybe one of these, or maybe say for Northeast Georgia, up in the 9th, maybe there was a challenger that decided to donate more money to the state party than the incumbent. And then the state party just decided, well, we're just not going to allow him to come on the ballot under our party name because
Bingo.
He doesn't fit our version of
Bingo.
conservatism. But really, he didn't donate enough money to us.
Because how is that defined?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's something that we would need like kind of written out as, delegates. Written out, what does this mean when we propose this? when this proposal comes through, because if it's just going to be like a small group and there's no like guidelines as to how they're going to choose who can come in and who can't, like it could boil down to who gave the most money.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very touchy
It's
and
like I said,
yeah.
it's scary. Like that's a touchy subject. You know what I mean? Because like, or think about this, right? What if this was proposed 8 years ago?
I mean, I'm pretty sure that this idea for a rule change has been around for at least 2 decades now.
But never with this magnitude,
no.
Right? And part of the reason why I
or
bring
at least
that up,
perceived magnitude anyway.
Part of the reason I bring that up is if this was around 8 years ago, this wouldn't even be a question.
Oh yeah,
because some of the people who are looking at proposing this would have been ousted a long time ago from the way that the party looked then, from the way that the party looks now.
It's a very fair point. There would have been a lot of people that would have been denied their names on the ballots
and membership.
Yeah, because of the fact that they did not adhere to the current party standing of where it was or where the party was 8 years ago.
Yeah,
we have seen a dramatic shift in the right as a from where we are or from where we were 8 years ago. We have, as a party in the state of Georgia, shifted to the right. I mean, there's no question about that.
Well, I mean,
we're a constitutional carry state. We have the heartbeat bill. We have a lot of. I mean,
we went from George Bush Republicans to Trump Republicans. Period.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, period. That's the movement that the state has had.
Or Trumpian Republican.
Yeah. And I classify that way only because not for the MAGA movement or established or anything like that, but for the sheer underlining ideology of kind of where things looked back then to where they are now.
We have become, in general, overall, a bolder party.
Yes.
We're not as bold as us here in the Northwest Georgia would ultimately love to see, but we have generally moved more to the right.
We don't shadow box anymore.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? A lot of the good things that conservatives did even 8 years ago was, either not really displayed to the people that well. It wasn't aggressive. And we've had that conversation, passive politics versus, just, confrontational politics as political theory. And the methodology and how individuals have moved and how the party has moved has drastically changed. So what happens if we propose this rule and it passes and then you see a shift in the party?
Well, we see another shift back towards the more passive aspect of where we
Correct.
were 8 years ago. So then you're looking at a lot of these people who are now more confrontational, more aggressive in this deal, being ultimately excluded from being able to get on the ballot because they are too extreme. They're too conservative.
Well, I'm thinking the opposite too. What if this passes, right? And then it dwindles the numbers of the party. And then
that it absolutely will, without question.
You see what I'm saying? And then you see a larger independent party form. Because I mean,
that's already happening.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like at some point you're going to see what I always call the standard deviation. It is going,
which it is in all.
The standard deviation is going to cultivate itself because we have polarized too much that there's no more middle voter. And even though we're already polarized to a certain degree, at some point there's going to be a level of organization behind it that is not going to be Republican if this passes or libertarian because that's too close to center and to the left for the way that Georgians think. So then, don't force people to become independents.
Yeah, these litmus tests when it comes to party involvement is never really a good idea. Although I will say, and this, I never want to come to the table with a problem without proposing a solution to it. And again, we've had this discussion off screen before and everything. And my idea is really what can really help alleviate a lot of the issues that we're seeing with the so-called folks who are not Republicans or not conservatives running in on our primaries and getting onto the ballot or making it through the primary is to close the primaries. If you close the primaries, you're not having the crossover voting that we saw, especially in 2022. I don't care what anybody says about what any talking head pundit or anything like that says about it. I pulled the numbers personally. I pulled the numbers from 6 years ago, every 2 years. So I went back 3 election cycles. I pulled every single one of the primary voters from all 3 of those elections and compared them to the 2020 midterm runoff. There was a 6% shift from Democrat voters that came over and voted in the Republican primary. That 6% was enough to essentially affect and decide some primary elections for our statewide offices without question. So if we close that and you cut off that 6%, you're at least allowing people who vote Republican to actually vote for their representatives and allow the Democrats to vote for them. You're not going to, especially nowadays, you're not going to have a Democrat who's high and mighty and thinks so much of themselves and their political leanings come out and have to register as a Republican, and that be public information that somebody can go pull up and look and say, oh, they're registered as a Republican. Because then you're looking at a lot of the potentials of backlash with that. You're looking at, so if you're going to apply for a job, they can do all the searches for it. Part of it may be they pull up your political leaning and say, oh, they're registered as a Republican. We're a Democrat company. No, pass them over. So they're not going to do that. So if you're a Republican and you have faith and believe in the Republican Party and the platform, you're going to register as Republican, and that's the primary that you're going to vote in for your candidate for that election. It would alleviate a lot of that crossover. So that would alleviate some of these, or in an instance, would alleviate the need for this rule. Because if you don't have a need for this rule because your primaries are closed, you're not going to have what would be, or at least what they are considering these weak Republicans, or in their words, rhinos.
That term is used so loosely. It's ridiculous.
Well, according to a lot of folks, or I say a lot, according to some folks, you and I are rhinos now.
Yeah,
which
whatever.
I would put my credentials up against any single one of them.
I've been in politics since I was 16 years old. Every in and out faction that you can think of, I've been called it. So whatever. I guess I'm a rhino now. I guess we're back to 2012. You know what I mean? Man. But I've been, let's see, 2011, 2010, 2011, I was called Tea Party. Then I became a rhino. It goes off years. Well, because, you know, once you've been in the game for a little while and people recognize your face, they're like, oh, you've been here too long. You're establishment.
Or you're being paid by the political machine, so you are a part of the problem.
See, that's a whole other argument, because some people, really, but here's the thing. Some people who make that argument are just mad because they don't get paid to do it anymore either.
Or they're not effective enough to be paid to do it.
Yeah. I mean, because from my record, some of them were paid at one point. And then
yes, it happens. But anyway, the main issue behind all of this is the fact of we're really starting to see not just this overall swing to purge the party of who may be considered a weaker conservative versus what the Puritan ideology stands. It's really going to it's going to end up killing the party.
Yeah,
the party right now as a whole is factionally split up. No, there's no denying that. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
By taking it to this next step, you are cementing this faction. You are creating a line that cannot be crossed over. You are excluding an entire area of potential candidates and potential folks from the opportunity to get engaged in the process and to really even have an option to have their mind changed.
Well, you know, here's my thing about that kind of red line, right?
I wouldn't even say it's a red line. I mean, it's a Grand Canyon.
Yeah. Well, some lines, canyons, whatever. Once you create them, where do they stop? And this is why I started with a line. And I'll use your canyon example. This is a line. If that line is drawn that says, okay, here is where we will accept people to be on the ballot as a Republican. At what point does that line get bolder and then become a canyon and say, well, now we want to move to who can be members?
Yeah, and there's already a movement for that, and allowing folks to participate in conventions.
Which is why I think it was interesting that the Liz Cheney thing was solved. Because look, it's a private organization. I understand that private organization can have whoever they want to in the party, especially if it's a state level hierarchy and they say, hey, or you're a state level figure, right? And the state level and all the locals come together and say, hey, we don't want this person in our party, right? They're no longer part of our organization. They don't represent our values. That's one thing. Telling someone that they don't have their freedom to come in and express their values in their view is a whole nother. To me, that's a line.
Well, again, as you said earlier, a private organization does have that right and that privilege.
Does have that right and the privilege.
What our argument is it's not, or at least what my argument is, I'm not going to speak for you on this, but is not that it is a right or a privilege that is being denied here for a person to come in and express their views, again, because it is a private organization. It's the denial of an opportunity, and it's really you're excluding people from a process that would inherently make it stronger, better, and have the potential of swinging other people more towards your argument or more towards your views and your thought process. So you're not just denying someone else an opportunity, you're denying yourself that opportunity as well.
Yeah, that's valid. And I get that more so than what I was saying earlier. I guess what it really boils down for me is now it makes running data awful, because even, you know what I mean? So let's go with the caucus idea, and let's go with the caucus format of closed primaries and this proposed rule change. Okay. You will never know, because then you're going to start seeing people who are like, well, I want to pull an independent ballot.
Jamie, I'm going to stop you right there. You're starting to sound like a political operative, and we already know those are bad. So
whatever. I know who I am as a person. Some people don't, but you know, that's kind of the thing, right? When you start, like, think about this, when you start looking at what it means to be independent too. Like if people are going to get pissed off, they say, okay, well, you don't want me to help the conservative movement. Look at look at the other deals I can cut. And then you'll never be, then how are we going to be able to get anything done? It will be like, imagine what this place will look like. I had this conversation with someone else earlier today, because I think it's a very keen distinction when we start trying to identify the differences in between good conservative growth versus urbanism, right? At its wildest, which is what Democrats want, and just flat out saying no to growth altogether, right? Because with a growing population, with the needs of infrastructure, with the needs of people, you're going to have some level of growth, right? What we can do as a political party is to make sure that good, big tent like-minded people are in great places so that we can have good conservative growth, because that is how you make sure that anything that's put in is good from a physical conservative side, that it's sent to by the people, that the people have a say-so in it, that the people have an opinion, have that can be expressed and stricken from something. Once we start closing off who we allow into the parties, then we start closing off what we allow, like what our elected officials are willing to represent, what they're willing to take off the like to the extreme version. To me, this is the start of Marxism.
Well, that's a valid perspective there with that.
Which is the complete opposite of what it means to be a Republican.
Yeah, you're becoming essentially a dictator within if your views are not upheld within the party structure, then you are outside the lines, or really you are not correct when viewed from the party platform or the political platform in terms of correctness. That's actually where the term political correctness comes from, is from the Marxist regime, when they brought in when Stalin came in. If your beliefs were gauged and compared to where Stalin lined up, and that was your scale of political correctness.
Yep.
So I mean, that is essentially a very communistic mindset with that. My thought on that is, and at least another thought on why this is a bad idea. When you have, as what some of these guys have characterized as these weak Republicans in office, and you have a very strong conservative outcry or very strong Republican outcry, if they are positioned here, we'll say here's middle, here's where they are, here's where you are, they're going to go more towards the right in order to meet your demand. They may not go all the way to where you are, but they're going to come back more towards you. And then the next process, they're going to go a little bit further to meet you. And then the next process, they're going to go a little bit further to meet you. Because the one thing that we know about all politicians is that they are going to want to be reelected. If they're not term limited, they're going to want to be reelected. So they're going to want to do what their constituency wants them to do. So by effectively, you are removing candidates from even being able to be considered on the ballot to have that movement done. And you're saying, if I'm here, you have to already be right here. Well, what if that candidate's over here? They're not going to go this way. They will either keep going further to the right, or they're going to stay right where they're at. Because as we see, and as we know, those who have strong convictions, or who are considered more, we'll call it, for lack of a better term, extreme in their political leanings, they don't compromise. They don't waver. They don't move left or right, or they don't move any further, or they don't move any closer to where the center is. If anything, they've moved further out from where the center is.
Yeah.
So
to appease the party.
Yes.
Even that's a very good point, because, and I'm just going to say it, the diehard activists like ourselves, right?
People who have actually worked to get others elected into office,
yes,
and actually put forth the effort, as opposed to just screaming about it and sending out fundraising emails.
Yeah, who haven't been able to get really any candidate in, and only claim candidates who were already going to win. Anyway, diehard activists like ourselves represent, less than 2% of the total voting population.
Well, anybody involved in the party in general represents 2%.
You see what I'm saying? And that's what I'm saying. Diehard activists, right? Like whether you are at the local level, showing up to every meeting, every function, or the district or the state, or whatever level that you are deeply involved, we represent a small minority of the entire voting population.
Mm-hmm.
That is not a very fair representation when it comes to something like this being proposed.
And if
anything, this backfires majorly.
Yeah, because it's such a small voting block that really all they got to do is just ignore you.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Like think about this. What, 2,000-3,000 people maximum? I think the total state convention delegation is 1,600 people, right? 1,600 people are going to decide how, you know, I don't know.
At most for a convention.
At most for convention, how
we're looking at potentially 150 for the
53%, 53% of 10 million. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you do that math, it doesn't track.
5.3 million.
Well, I wasn't gonna do it, but you know what I'm saying? Whatever. You know, 5.3 million. It doesn't track why this would be even a viable option
or a smart option.
Well, I said viable because it's really stupid. It's really dumb.
You are essentially
you're alienating yourself, and you plan on alienating and destroying the party when you do this.
And you're ensuring that a Democrat will win every single time,
or a independent.
Well, no. Think of it this way: you have the Republic. So right now we're 53%. Statistically speaking, 53% a Republican state right now.
Yeah.
Just based on the numbers, voter turnout, everything along that line. Well, if you then come in and fraction or factionalize the party to where it completely splits, now you're looking at most, 26% on either side of that. You still have 47% with the Democrats. Well, ultimately, it's going to be a runoff between the Democrat and whichever one of the other parties wins that.
Yeah.
And then tell me how many members of the opposing party on the conservative side decide not to show up for a general election. A Democrat's going to win every single time. An independent has no chance whatsoever.
That's valid, because even what I'm classifying as independent would be the new conservative party.
Of which, if they leave the Republican Party, it would guarantee that no Republican or new conservative party would ever win a statewide office ever again.
Well, see, here's the other mind-blowing thing, to me, because I get paranoid, right? And I'm sitting here, I'm like, what if this is their plan? Because there's someone local who technically is only not a Democrat because the Democratic Party legally kicked him out, who runs around in a MAGA hat and says that he's now part of the new movement, who I have proof, who asked a local Democrat if he could run his campaign while wearing a MAGA hat
against a sitting Republican.
I don't think people are paying attention. They're just listening to the noise. And because everyone just wants to see it on their phone, they're not doing the research and not actually getting down to the facts of what's actually happening.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
It's very true.
Freaking terrifying.
Yeah,
I've been joking with Justin all week because this is the Alamo. You know what I mean?
This rule change would be the death of the conservative party overall.
Yep.
In my mind, that is the reason why I am wholeheartedly against this proposed rule change.
Yep.
And I urge the state committee rules or the state rules committee to reject this proposed rule change. And I urge and really plead with any delegate that will be attending the state convention to please do not suspend the rule when it comes to allowing rules and resolutions to be brought from the floor.
Yeah, I also I concur, and I really hope that the person who proposed this rule change or someone within that organization come join us on the show to talk about their opinion. Because if we're
Give
wrong,
us their side.
Yeah, if we're wrong and they have a better idea, I need to hear it. Especially as a delegate, I need to hear it. Because right now, I see the death of something that I love. And I know that even though we may disagree, I know that it means a lot to them too. So I feel that it's time that we have the conversation, because if you don't, then we're going to have a larger problem.
And I know we've been mentioning specifically a group or an organization that's doing this. It's not that we, or at least, again, I'm speaking for myself. It's not that I oppose or dislike this group or organization. There are some great great individuals that are with this organization that are incredible that I look up to personally. There are some individuals within this organization that are using this opportunity as a means for fundraising, as a means to grow and garner their own population. They are capitalizing on anger that has been brewing since 2000 and
15.
no, I'd say 2012.
That's about right, because
Obama's reelection.
It really kicked off with 2015, and I will say this, right? There are a lot of people within that organization who I respect highly, similar to what Justin was saying. But again, I urge you to go look at the facts and the numbers, and you look, since they've called me a political operative, I want you to go as a political operative, go look and see that they are political operatives. That's it. That's the bottom line. And one thing that I hate more than anything is a liar. And the fact that
even more
the masses are being persuaded by this illusion is really triggering for me. Because don't hear and say that you don't believe in political operatives.
I don't know. We just had the VA GOP, very similar nomination, that the majority of the Freedom Caucus members in congressional GOP, 3 of 5 GOP. The activists, more activist control equals more in Congress, less control equals more McCarthy Republicans in Congress. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
So we just had a comment come in from gentleman Brant Frost. It says the VA GOP have very similar nomination method, and they have a majority of Freedom Caucus members in their congressional GOP delegations. 3 of 5 VA GOP congressmen are House Freedom Caucus members. More activist control equals more House Freedom Caucus members in Congress. Less control equals more McCarthy Republicans in Congress.
But so
that's funny.
I want to hear how that works for this situation. Like, Brent, please come on. Like,
and Brent, we're not doing this.
Like this is I genuinely want to know your perspective.
And our invitation to you to have you come on our show as a candidate for the statewide office
still stands.
It is not a trap. We're not trying to get you on here. As if you go back and watch every single one of our interviews with all the candidates that are running for these statewide positions, you'll see Jamie and I hardly say anything. It's mostly about a 45-minute opportunity for you to speak and get your message out that we would then share. We're not here to trap anybody with this.
I'm a person,
as our name says, it's conservatives talk.
I'm a person who I have a very strong opinion, and I want to know someone else's, because even though I may at the end of the day agree to disagree, like, I want to know the perspective behind what led to someone making a decision, because I think that is telling, especially as we move towards the future of what it looks like and how we keep Georgia red. I think we agree on more than we disagree, but until we have the conversation, no one will ever know.
Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. So in addressing this issue that he's talking about here, as far as the Virginia GOP having this method in their congressional delegations, really being more part of the House Freedom Caucus. Being a part of the House Freedom Caucus is not it is one of the greatest conservative caucuses. It is the greatest conservative caucus in the House, without question about
hands
that.
Down.
But the thing about it is that it's also, in some instances, a hindrance overall, because it's not really known for being, and I know I'm going to regret saying this, and I'm going to kick myself when I go back and relook at this, but it's not really known for being very productive. And I'm not saying anything bad about that, just bringing that point up. My response to that, the 3 of the 5, and having this rule engaged with that, is the fact that, well, That's Virginia. Virginia is not Georgia. Georgia is a much larger and much broader uh, spectrum of our party overall. We are a conservative. We are a conservative state. However, we are not Virginia conservative. We are not the conservatives that are shackled right up next to DC, where everyone is centralized in a singular two-part district, to where two of the seats there would not are not going to be all that conservative. Yes, we have the metro Atlanta area right there where you have a lot of people that are centralized, but all of those are Democrats. The vast majority of the rest of the area that is surrounding Georgia, when you go back and look at it, it's very conservative leaning, and every single one of those Republicans, although they may not be a part of the House Freedom Caucus, are still highly conservative. Barry Loudermilk, not a member of the House Freedom Caucus, still very constitutionally conservative.
Very.
So just because you are not a member of the House Freedom Caucus does not mean that you are not conservative.
I think that's part of my argument here.
Hang on. He said blocking bad stuff is plenty productive. VA is very similar state to Georgia. DC, Metro, Richmond are similar to Atlanta. No.
I don't know that much about how Virginia operates as a GOP.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, and
blocking may work if you're in the minority party, but I mean,
yes, that is true. But again, Brandon, and I'm not going to continue to read these messages on that. You have a standing invitation to come and join us on the show. Please do. As again, we will have a discussion. This is by no means a hit piece. This is no. I mean, this is not going to be something that is chopped up and put out in segments to where anything's going to make it look
just
bad.
Like this one.
Exactly. I mean, again, as the name implies, this is conservatives talk. Our conservatives coming together to have the discussions, which if this rule change comes into place, you will be excluding people from being able to have these discussions. So anyway, moving forward with that, that's at least I've had my say on where
that's what I think, guys. I think it's damaging the party, and some people think it could be positive. I'd like to hear that opinion. I really would. I really would. You may be able to change my mind before we get to convention in June, but I don't see how, and I don't see how this doesn't become some kind of elitist organization once we start putting in a litmus test on you telling someone what to do.
Yeah, and
I mean, like I cringe just when I know Justin's joking about how we do the intro of the show. You know what I mean? Can you imagine if how me or anybody else would look if you had to go sit before a panel to give your resume of what you've done to be a conservative you want to run for office?
Yeah, I know people who have sat
before panels and failed and then run for office, and now they're some of the greatest people who have ever been elected.
Yeah.
Have literally sat before that, done the similar situation in front of organizations and
or the political power that be,
or as whatever,
that they thought,
and then become some of the greatest conservatives we've ever seen in the United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
If we do this, we will be damaging ourselves. Speaking from experience.
Well, anyway, with that, as with every great thing in life, we do like to remind our viewers to make sure they are hitting the like button and the share button on any of the productions that we release on any of our platforms, as well as making sure you are hitting the subscribe button. That way you can always stay up to date on any of the productions Jamie and I do produce and put out into the world and to the great beyond, and all the aliens that are active listeners to our show. We also require that everyone go to our website at conservativestyle.org and hit that sponsor tab and help Jamie and I to continue to produce these wonderfully magnificent and highly intellectually beneficial productions just for you and
I-
for your greater benefit to make your life better in every
I
way.
cringe every time he closes and opens the show.
We also want to say a quick thank you to our affiliates, and our first one being Net News Network. So make sure you are looking for Net News Network at netnewsnetwork.net, as well as our affiliate Veterans for America First. You can find them at vfaf.org, and their media arm, Vet Voice. You can find Vet Voice on every major social media platform. So make sure you are looking for all of the America First policy producers on Vet Voice. Jamie, so with that in mind, would you care to give us your final thoughts?
And final thoughts from Uncle Fester for those of you who don't know. As I've been saying for months, we are coming, we're finally here. We're towards the getting ready for state convention, towards the end of convention cycle. It is very important that we get involved for reasons that we have discussed beforehand. I think it's very important that we continue to have conversations as conservatives so that we do not alienate other conservatives for whatever reason. I always want to tell people that never judge someone before you get to know them, because, and I feel at it every day, but I think it's a good principle to live by, because your views may be more aligned with someone than you think until you have a conversation with them. With that, I look forward to seeing everyone in Columbus, which is one of my favorite cities, June 8th through 10th for state convention. I think it's going to be really big, and I think it's going to be really good. I think it's something that we need to discuss and get out as a entire party and finally have the conversation that we've been all begging to have for the last year. And can I say it?
Depends on what you want to say.
You know what I want to say.
No, I'm actually a little nervous.
Okay. All right. Well, I won't say it. Someone's going to be there, though.
No.
President Trump's coming.
Yeah,
President Trump's coming. President Trump is coming to state convention.
Yes. Yeah.
We can finally say it. Oh, my God.
That has been publicly announced already.
Holy hell. I feel like if you've ever watched The Office and you've seen Kevin.
No.
Kevin's
just stop. Anyway, this is Conservatives Talk, and we will see you later this week.